First of all, General, welcome to our studios.
Thank you for inviting me today.
Afghans are arguing with the Obama overview of the Afghan strategy that the focus is now more diverse to Pakistan rather than Afghanistan. So what is your assessment?
I think it's worthwhile to look back to the NATO summit in Lisbon that took place at the end of November this year, and the declaration on the policy towards Afghanistan in a regional context, together with Pakistan and Iran and others. This assessment was kind of binding for all the nations, and there are several nations who did a strategic review. The United States of America did one, Germany did one, other countries as well. So they all are, on the basis of the Lisbon summit, doing diagnostic papers on progress and developments of their policies towards Afghanistan. And Pakistan has always playing a very important role. And Pakistan is still one of the key issues for the entire process in this region. I think there is perhaps not a specifically stronger focus on Pakistan, but what I would say is that the coordination and cooperation between Afghanistan, ISAF and Pakistan has improved over time. And only last week, General Kayani came over from Islamabad here to Kabul and had very open, very productive talks with General Petraeus and also with General Karimi. So I think Pakistan is getting closer and the coordination is getting better now.
General, in an Afghan perspective, Afghans, military expert or the Ministry of Defense officials, they think the idea of transferring the security issues to the responsibility of the security issues to the Afghan forces, this is something which is very early because they think they don't have the right equipment, they don't have the right number of the soldiers to take care of the security issues or to fight against the Taliban and other insurgents. So transferring the power to the Afghan forces, they think at these stages which mentioned in the Obama overview, it's premature. So they're arguing they don't have the right equipment and they don't have the right number of the soldiers to do this.
Well, first of all, let me say that we have got still 4 years for building up the Afghan security forces in terms of numbers, but more importantly in terms of capabilities and quality. But what is also of note is the fact that the year 2014 was a vision expressed the first time by President Karzai, actually 1 year ago, when he did his inaugural speech at the beginning of his second term as president on the 19th of November last year. President Karzai, was the one who portrayed his vision to be able as Afghans to take over the lead responsibility for security in this country.
But General, if during the last 9 years the international community and the Afghan government were not be able to help to build the Afghan army or to provide them with the right sort of the equipments, so how could it be possible that you will do this task during the 4 years?
Well, first of all, that's actually a very good point, and it gives me the opportunity to say that the phase which we're in right now is very different from what we have seen between 2001 and 2006. Between 2001 and 2006, the entire operation and campaign here in Afghanistan was definitely under-resourced. We did not have all the necessary forces and resources and the structures and the people and the concepts which we have right now. So, yes, we are here for already 9 years, but what we are seeing now, what we are right now able to do actually and achieve is very different from what has happened many years ago. So in other words, we have got now the right inputs in place in order to do a comprehensive counterinsurgency strategy. That's actually the point, at the core of it. To do that counterinsurgency strategy, which implies also the build-up of the Afghan security forces. And the build-up of the Afghan security forces started only 3 or 4 years ago, not 9 years ago. When I was here in 2007 as Commander, Regional Command North in Mazar-e-Sharif, I have seen Afghan army and police that was not nearly this what we see today. If I compare it with what I'm seeing today, The Afghan forces have made a huge development.
But General, did you think during the last 9 years the youth were not determined to build up the Afghan army? What was
Well,
that?
I think, yeah, actually this is one of the answers to it. I think the international community did not invest enough and not early enough in the build-up of the Afghan security forces. That actually started only three and a half years ago, and now there is a huge, very productive and efficient training organization in place, which is called the NATO Training Mission Afghanistan.
So you think the Afghan can blame the foreigners to do not build up the Afghan army or provide them with the right sorts of equipment to fight terrorism?
I wouldn't say that it is about blaming. You know, we didn't see the requirement. We didn't see the demand. In the first years of this conflict, there were many people who didn't see that it was necessary to build up such a strong security force.
At the beginning, General, they underestimated the Taliban power?
I think at the beginning, between 2002, after the Taliban regime was done away with, until 2006 or so, there were many people in Afghanistan, but also in the international community, who did not actually recognize and acknowledge that there is a potential for trouble and more potential for violence. So in case we would have started earlier, then perhaps the situation would look differently. And this I clearly admit. But now we have changed completely the course. We have set in motion a very powerful organization. We have got in the necessary resources. The United States of America, for example, is investing $12 billion every year in the equipment and training of the Afghan security forces.
General, what's the guarantee that this strategy that right now you have, or the new overview of the strategy, this is the right strategy, or within 1 or 2 years you will not change your mind? Because, look, Afghans are worrying about that the international forces will leave Afghanistan on 2014, which they think, once again, they will leave Afghans alone, and they will go to their countries, and then the terrorists will be, come to Afghanistan, and the civil war will start again.
As you say, there is a concern that the international community again will leave the country. And this is exactly the point I wanted to make, because we made this mistake in 1989 when the Russians left. Then we, the Western countries, also left the region. And this was a mistake. I think it was a big mistake to leave Afghanistan and the region in 1989 when the Russians left. And we will not make this mistake again. The NATO summit in Lisbon 5 weeks ago, agreed upon two things. The first one is the transition of security to the Afghans between 2011, which is next year, and 2014. And the second agreement was about the enduring partnership, a long-term enduring partnership even beyond 2014. That means that we are not going to make this mistake again. We will stay here with a smaller force, because the Afghan forces will be bigger, and we will stay here with a force of more a training and mentoring nature, still supporting Afghanistan, still supporting the Afghan security forces, plus, of course, the commitment for development and better governance. So we will stay here for a long time. I don't know how long, but nobody must be worried about leaving the country. This will not happen.
General, according to the Obama overview of the strategy, what Joe Biden said openly to the press, that after 2014 they will start to leave Afghanistan. And now the Ministry of Defense and the Afghan security forces don't have a sort of like a clear vision about the strategy, that when, where, and which sorts of the equipments will deliver to the Afghan army and Afghan police forces. So the lack of resources to the Afghan forces will also cause then the clashes between the different groups, and then the Afghanistan will once again go to the sort of like a civil war.
Yeah, I'd like to invite you to see the bigger picture. I mean, it's completely appropriate to discuss the military issues, the military instruments, which are absolutely necessary and indispensable, absolutely. But we do have to see more. It's not about the military instruments only. It's also about politics. It's also about development. And it's also about reconciliation and reintegration. What we are seeing now in the area of reintegration, for example, is very encouraging. So the COIN strategy, the counterinsurgency strategy, which is in place for around about 1.5 years only and not for 9 years, is an all-encompassing strategy following a civil-military approach. And within this all-encompassing complex strategy, we need to do more of everything. We need to do more on the military side, special forces, conventional forces, Afghan local police. We need to do more on the non-military side, as I said, reintegration, development, governance, and so on and so forth. And I'm completely convinced that this is the right approach. And although I'm not going to comment on what Vice President Biden has said, what is really binding, what is really the common fundament for everybody in ISAF, and these are 48 nations, what is really the fundament is the declaration signed in Lisbon. And as I said, this declaration is about transition, and even beyond transition, even beyond 2014, there will be an enduring partnership between the international community and Afghanistan. You will see that.
Yeah, but generally, the strategy is now more focused on counter-terrorism rather than counterinsurgency. And also, I want to tell you about what General David Petraeus, the head of the NATO, said to the ABC TV, that there is no sign that the Afghan army will be able until 2014 to independently act against the terrorist groups in Afghanistan. So, having said that, did you think there is a clear vision or the strategy is the right approach until 2014 that the Afghan, if the U.S. powerful general in Afghanistan do not think that there is no sign of any sort of progress that the Afghan army will be able to take the security issues or fighting against terrorism. So then how could we be able, or how could you say that this strategy is the right approach and the right strategy?
We are completely convinced that this is the right strategy, and this is a strategy that is even, thankfully, supported by the Afghan government. The all-encompassing strategy is the only way to address the complexity of challenges we are seeing. We are seeing so many reasons for trouble, so many problems in the country, that we need to answer it with a comprehensive, complex answer or strategy, which is the COIN strategy. It is not focusing exclusively on the military tools. It is not exclusively or even more, emphasizing counterterrorism. We are doing more of everything. We do more counterterrorism. We do more reintegration. We do more training of Afghan security forces. We do more, stand-up of Afghan local police. We do more of everything. And this is the right approach. And I'm completely convinced that everybody in ISAF, in NATO, on the Afghan side is buying into it. And we are seeing actually effects. We are seeing effects in certain very important locations of this country. In Kandahar and in Helmand. We see it in Marja, in Panjwai, in Arghandab. We see it in Uruzgan, in Chutu Valley, in Uruzgan. We see it in Kunduz. And not to forget, I think we can see it in Kabul, which is the capital of your country, with 5 million inhabitants, which is a sixth of the entire population. The security situation in Kabul is right now, and you have seen, 2010 was a relatively peaceful year here in Kabul.
General, there are a lot of elements about the security issues. If you talk about the Marja is a small district with a few hundred people who are living over there. But the sort of the media attention to the Marja and the Western media, which were more focused in Marja, that was a small operation with a few number of the people who are living in a very remote district. But still, there is no full security in a whole Marja. And if you look at the Helmand, the security is deteriorating. And still there are attacks, roadside bomb attacks. And in most of the provinces in Helmand is under the Taliban control. And in the large area of the Kandahar is also, even in Panjwai, in Arghandab, only the center of the district is under the control of the government. But the complete district is under the Taliban control. And Taliban are still be able to organize attacks on a main Kandahar city as well. So when people think about the way that you portray the picture that the security is a little bit improved or the Taliban are overrun, but what Afghan people see? Look, the situation on the north, the Baghlan province, You can compare Baghlan now with the Helmand province. You can compare the Kunduz with any province in the south, because now Taliban are very active in the north. If you remove them from a little bit from the Kandahar or Helmand, now they have a strong hold in the north. And also in some other cities, like in Ghazni, the situation is deteriorating, and in the north of the country, the situation is bad, and even in the eastern, like cities like Laghman, like the Nangarhar provinces, now Taliban are very active in these areas. So people think that the picture that you portray, it's totally different than the reality, what people see.
I think we need to be realistic. We are not optimists. We are not pessimists. We are realists. And I do understand the concern of the people. Yes, it is clear that there is still Taliban around, be it in Marja, be it in Kunar, be it in Baghlan, or be it in Faryab or Badghis. There is still insurgency. There is still Taliban around. But I do not share at all your description of the overall situation. Marja is better off than before. Before our offensive started in mid-February this year, Marja was completely controlled by Taliban. Taliban had been controlling Marja for many years, completely unchallenged. This has changed. And in the central Helmand River Valley districts like Zangin, Musakala, Navasiraj, Nadali, and others, the situation is better than before. I tell you that that currently the numbers, let me call it the violence statistics, show a decrease of violence in Helmand by 15 to 18% now, 3 weeks in a row already. And we do see still violence and Taliban in Kandahar, but the situation in Panjwai and Arghandab is very different from what we saw, let's say, 6 months ago. There is even now, you can see even the beginning of a better governance, because there are civil servants coming in, that there is an increased number of development projects. So overall, I would say the number of violent events is actually decreasing. It has to do with the pressure we are putting on the insurgency. It also has to do with the seasonal effects, with weather conditions, etc., etc. But, I tell you, we are intercepting radio traffic of the Taliban. And this clearly shows what problems they are facing right now. We have cut off and confiscated logistics. We are destroying their funding bases by getting, huge amounts of narcotics, which is used usually for funding their activities, and so on and so forth. So we do see effects. We have seen that progress is possible in certain areas, but not overall. There is still work to do.
You take over some districts or some villages in a south, but then you lost control over some other areas in the north of the country.
No, that's not true.
And even what was happening in Nuristan.
No, that's not true. If you look at, for example, what has happened in Kunduz and Baghlan, in summer 2010, we could clearly see that there was a deterioration of security. Yes, admitted. But then, having gotten into the northern region reinforcements, particularly from the United States, they brought in 5,000 soldiers. They brought in more than 50 helicopters. And also, then there was the buildup of security forces and ALP sites in Kunduz, for example. Now we can clearly see in the fourth quarter of the year 2010 that the situation again has shifted. We were able to arrest the Taliban momentum. We were even able to reverse the Taliban momentum in certain areas, in Charadara, for example, which is one of the most important districts, or Aliabad, on the road between Polikumri and Kunduz. So, yes, there is still work to do. It's not yet over, but we have shown that effects are possible, and we have now to solidify the gains we have made. The progress is still fragile. It is not yet irreversible. So we have to solidify what we have gained over the last 3 to 4 months, and therefore we will not see a pause, a break over winter. We will continue putting pressure on the Taliban, and I think 2011 will see a successful start of transition in Afghanistan.
Yeah. General, I want to ask you another question about the recent ISAF-led operation in Kabul. Most of the Afghans are arguing that after the London conference, the Kabul security was totally delivered to the Afghan forces. So why that operation was happening, and who was responsible for that, and why? If you deliver the security issues or responsibility of the security to the Afghan forces, so did you still need to operate in a main city in like Kabul?
You know, the bottom line, the quick answer is yes. There is still insurgency also in Kabul. The Afghan security forces do have the responsibility for security in Kabul for more than 2 years already. The handover of security happened in August 2008. And since then, security has become better and better and better over time. The number of violent events went down significantly, which is a wonderful development. And it is absolutely thanks to the Afghan security forces. And people here in Kabul benefit from it, very much so. But there is still insurgency. There is still potential for trouble in this city. And therefore, we need a cooperation and an exchange primarily of information and intelligence between ISAF and the Afghan security forces, to include the National Directorate for Security. So this is going on all the time. And when operations are necessary, these operations are always partnered and coordinated. And now you were asking specifically for the operation on the 24th of December. Also, this operation was coordinated and partnered between ISAF and the respective Afghan security forces. It was necessary to do something because there was credible intelligence, referring to 2 cars fully stuffed with explosives. So a combined unit went there on the scene, and when they arrived on the scene, they were shot at by 2 individuals, and the combined force returned fire and killed those 2 individuals. So it was a coordinated thing.
Yeah, but did you find the car full of explosive?
No.
So the report was wrong?
Yes, that can happen.
So look, the civilian casualties have a bad impact over the mindset of the people, because you cannot win the heart and mind of the people.
But there's a difference. When we are talking about civilian casualties, it is about casualties of the Afghan people, say innocent civilians in the country. But in this case, the combined unit arrived on the scene and was shot at by 2 individuals from within a building. And then we returned fire, and then we killed those 2 individuals who were legitimate targets because they started to shoot.
But still you admit that these guys were working with the private security company, which they provide security to some of the government or some private installation as well.
Well,
not
there was no reason for these 2 guys to shoot at ISAF and Afghan forces.
So it still shows that if you do not find the car full of explosive, it means that your report was wrong and you operate based on a wrong report.
Sometimes in a war zone like this, it's possible that you get...
But Kabul is not a war zone. Kabul is the middle of the city. For the last several months,
I tell you what,
we didn't have any incident in Kabul.
I tell you what, Kabul is perhaps not a war zone, but in Kabul you still find bad elements, such as Taliban and Haqqani fighters. And we need to get after these bad elements. Otherwise, 5 million people in this big city would not have the chance to live in peace. So from time to time, we need to very aggressively, always coordinated and always partnered, go after these individuals and elements. And sometimes, in a situation like this, in a situation like, we are having here in Afghanistan, a report can be weak.
The main question is, General, if you transfer the security issues to the Afghan forces 3 years ago, so now why did the ISAF forces jump to this operation? Because still, if these individuals are in Kabul, still you have a time, and this is a calm area, still you can decide to check again the sort of intelligence you have and everything. So, because why the people are arguing? Most of the time this is, if in a city like in Kabul, which you have access to every area and there is no fear of the insurgent attack, in a Kabul, if you act this sort of prematurely act like this, and then what will be happening in the provinces which you fear the Taliban are over there?
Well, this act was not prematurely. In case, the reports would have been right, and in case the 2 explosive stuffed cars would go off and kill perhaps 50 or 100 people, everybody would blame the Afghan security forces and ISAF, because the exchange of information perhaps wouldn't have been good. So it is very important to take all reports, and some reports are weak, yes, but it's very important to take all reports very sensibly and seriously, and then go after a potential threat. So this is important. You know, and there is, of course, still ISAF troops in Kabul, predominantly the Turkish contingent. We are providing support, for example, on the occasion of the Peacejäger in June, for example, on the occasion of the Kabul conference in July, for example, on the occasion of the elections on the 18th of September. So we are working closely together, ISAF and Afghans, also in Afghanistan, in Kabul, in order to provide the necessary security.
Yeah,
we still do training
case,
and mentoring advice.
General, I want to tell you that in this specific case, the Ministry of Interior offered apology to that security company, and they held 2 individuals, which was the official of the Ministry of Interior. They held them responsible, and they fired one of them, and now they set an inquiry for that case. And they offer apology to the media, to that security company. So it's mean that it's wrong. If the Ministry of Interior offered apology, it's mean that they did something wrong. What about you?
Well, again, this operation was partnered. It was coordinated. We arrived at the scene against the background of a very credible report. And we felt
Police mentioned that
responsible.
you were not involved in that operation.
And we were responsible, we felt responsible to do something against a potential threat against Afghan civilians in this big city. So it would have been irresponsible not to do this. And the perspective of the Afghan Ministry of Interior is known to us. We know what they have said. I have talked to my counterpart, Mr. Bashri, who's, by the way, a friend of mine. We exchanged views, and I think the case is somewhat satisfactorily closed. It's very important looking forward, looking ahead, to perhaps even improve the exchange of information and coordination.
But still, General, did you think that it could be better if you take some more measures or make some more the exchange of sort of information with the NDAs, with the Ministry of Interior and Ministry of Defense and some other ministries to organize a sort of like an operation, which the outcome was like a mess to all of, for the Afghan security forces, for the Afghan government, and for the ISAF as well.
Well, I'd say if you look at what is going on in terms of coordination and cooperation on a daily basis, you would be really impressed. It starts at the ministerial level. It starts with the so-called Senior Security Shura that occurs every Saturday. And you see Ministers Wardak and Bismillah Khan and General Petraeus sitting together every week. It goes then down to platoon and company level in the field. There's a very close coordination on a daily basis.
If the police says that they were not included in that operation and nobody was exchanging information with them, so then...
If you ask me, I can clearly give you the comment, the view by ISAF that this operation was coordinated and partnered.
Yep. So Ministry of Interior is wrong, what they said, that operation was not coordinated with them.
ISAF's view is it was coordinated and partnered.
Yep. General, one more thing, that according to the dialogue with the Taliban, how much confidence you have that one day the Taliban will accept the offer and they will sit and talk?
Well, first of all, coming one more time back to President Karzai's inaugural address, 19th of November last year, his second vision he was offering to the public and to Afghanistan and to the world was that the Afghan Peace and Reconciliation Program is necessary. And in terms of this Afghan Peace and Reconciliation Program, Afghanistan and the government of your country took the lead for potential talks to the insurgency. So it's an Afghan-led program, and ISAF is in a supporting role to it, and not, taking a role of a participant, for example. We are hoping very much that the High Peace Council, chaired by Professor Rabbani, and we're hoping very much that the Afghan government as such is deciding correctly on whom to talk, when to talk, and where to talk. And it's completely to the Afghan side to make these decisions. We are supporting it, but we don't participate in it. What we say is that, that we, I think, really have to be, open to, to certain contexts, that we have to be open when it comes to the importance of reconciliation and reintegration, because it forms a pillar, a necessary element in the overall process here.
Thank you very much, General, for it.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.